to me, like the breadth of the role is what's so important in like trying to create this through line of what is the story of the product. And I know story is kind of like an overused word at this point, but just like a really clear vision for what this thing is and why someone would buy it, and carrying that through all the way from the marketing page and the price point and how it looks, all the way down to how it feels when you buy it and use it and how it works. And trying to like set up our marketing team to like do the least amount of lying, like where like they feel really good about the claims that we're making, because how they would have to explain the product was really thoroughly considered in how we designed the product, and vice versa. For me, ultimately, everything is a trade-off. And to some degree, especially for these really complex products, it's hard to fully isolate any one trade-off. Like they all start stacking, nesting, they're all inextricably linked. And so to me, some of like the funnest stuff where I'm in the most flow state, but also where I kind of need to be and defend it to be, is like loading up in my head, like here's everything about the product that I can fit within reason. And like a lot of times that's putting it on either a big ass whiteboard or, like a big whiteboard, or sometimes like there's this app Muse where it has like an infinite canvas. I love it. And we'll try and like load it up there and like really just spatializing it all out and trying to see like, okay, let's group stuff together, create like a real clear story for like each feature and how that then comes with cost trade-offs and everything like that. So like, I love the process of like, even before we've built anything, just like loading it all up, trying to see like what are all the decisions and what are all like the key features, and then trying to like sit there and distill like, how would I explain this to someone in like an elevator, like why buy this thing? And there will always be differences per audience and differences per people, but just having like a real clear like story for, yeah, like it's beautiful, it packs a lot of value for its dollars, and it's really easy to use, like just like basic stuff like that, like, and then having the sub bullets to then give sort of concreteness to each of those more higher level claims. Like that's my favorite part, where it is hard to like ticketize some of that stuff in that early phase, but that's some of the most flowy, kind of most interesting stuff we love to do. And then as much of that we can turn into either market research surveys in the really early stage to like there's foam prototypes, and sometimes we'll get some renders and some mock-ups and just like make like a fake product details page and just say like, hey, like if you saw this as an ad, like would it be interesting? Product management to some degree is an even more generalist version of design, in that like you're still thinking through really heavily core trade-offs in the design of the product, but you're extending beyond like the visual aspects of it, which designers would also push back on that being the core of their role, but like if not them, who? But still like the behavior of the product, designing and defining that. And I think really thinking through trade-offs up and down, be it like the cost structure or the packaging, the shipping, then like trade-offs on the software side for like what features do we support, complexity. I think all of that feeds into like what is the product. I think ultimately that to me is design. So just taking as much of like a holistic viewpoint across the whole thing. I think that to me has been what's been so important about sort of elevating up to this role where it works across product and design, where it's all this one singular vision enacted all the way through.
There's a lot of coffee products in the market, and Fellows is an excellent one. I guess I'd be curious how you know when you've achieved something very good versus like the thing that you're building is just okay.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what it means by quality. I think when it comes to like the quality of the feature set and concept, I think that comes from, we have like our distributors or wholesalers come in and come see prototypes and give us feedback. And oftentimes the distributors we work with are experts in coffee. Like some of them, like Crate and Barrel, Williams Sonoma, like they have people who are experts for that, but generally like by the time they like engage with us, like they're broader level buyers who like, they have a huge knowledge across the whole kitchen space, but coffee is like a part of their focus. But sometimes when we work with like, there's this one distributor in Canada called 8 Ounce. They specifically sell coffee gear, and they are a just well depth of knowledge of, they will go and give us very critical feedback of like, hey, we love this, we hate this, like, and they'll do it like either live or like we'll send them stuff back and forth. And so we get a lot of really great expert level feedback from those folks on like, have we hit the mark for the pros? Part of where I think we're more unique than many other brands is in this helpfulness that we can bring to folks who are sort of newer on their coffee journey. And so we need to earn the respect of the coffee pros. We need to make something that satisfies at least their home needs. But we're not doing our job right if they're the only people who buy it. Because we try and make our products that can then connect with the broader folks who, from talking to the coffee pros, they have the confidence that this is a high quality product, but on the flip side, it's easy enough to use that before they've had their coffee, fundamentally, in the morning, they're able to just like make it do what it needs to do. So from the quality of the concept, they're like, that's how we get feedback on that. Then on the flip side, when it comes to like the quality of like, does this thing work correctly? Or like, is the fit and finish of the product really good? That one is a lot more empirical in that sense. Like we have a bunch of people who they've been drilled into this, like either from working at Apple or working at like other companies where quality is also a huge point of pride. Where we go in there and we have like very detailed specifications from the factory, like, okay, it needs to be like this grade surface, it needs to look exactly like this, here's the exact percent deviation you're allowed to do. And that's a much more like meticulous, closer to engineering process where we're like reviewing samples and really dictating the process with our suppliers to ensure that like every unit that comes out as much as we can is like works exactly how we say it should. So to that end, like, yeah, there's two major aspects of quality, right? There's like, is it what we say it is? And is what we're saying it is good? I come from an industrial design background. I think there's a lot of school of thought in sort of form being driven entirely by function. I am not entirely in that boat. I think there's a lot to having a form that is appealing, that brings people in, that they get joy from. I think there's a lot of brands in the kitchen space who, if you were to take it apart, it is functionally identical to anything else you could have bought. And yet, that's not, like, people love those products because they choose them not necessarily, sometimes they choose them despite how they function because it looks cute next to X, Y, or Z thing, or like it fits their vibe, it brings them happiness, and like, that's a legitimate thing. For us, we do have quite a lot of customers who buy our products because they love how they look. We try really hard to make it so that it's not style in spite of function. We work really hard to make highly functional products that really win on how well they do what they're supposed to do, like even competitively at the same price point. But they also then do it in style. But you know, it's easy enough for me to say that we do make very clear trade-offs in the spirit of style. Like with our new coffee maker, we could have made it hold a lot more water, brew a lot more coffee, but it would have made it a lot bigger. And there's an amount of it where it's like, it's this dense power cube that you can just, like, it's hard to communicate how like small relatively it is, especially like looking at it in the videos. Like it's like this big, it like sits on it is a cube, but it's really dense and it has all this stuff like built into it. But then there's also like practical reasons why you want it small. Like then it doesn't feel like it's looming on all your stuff. But also if you have low-hanging cabinets, like if it's small, then you can like use it without having to pull it out. There's also some amount of trade-off in a way for like the customer, but also from like a business perspective and sort of having people talk about our products and be proponents of it and word of mouth, where if you make a product that's really beautiful, you're much more likely to stay on the counter and not just be brought out when it's in use. And so there's a lot of like business benefits to that, where we make something that earns its right to stay on your counter permanently, then yeah, when people come over, they'll come see it. You'll be proud to share it off, and maybe they might buy one too. So there's a lot of reasons why style has very tangible benefits to our products, to our customers. And so yeah, it's not above everything else, but yeah, it's a major factor in how we design our products.
What is the ultimate motivation behind creating something like so high quality, or that's like pushing the boundaries in the experience like this? Specifically for the individual builders, like if you want to speak for yourself or from what you've noticed from people on your team, like, is it that you also love great things like in your life, or is there some kind of thrill of actually building something that can achieve this level of like excellent experience that's driving you, or maybe it's something else?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people out there, not most, but a lot of people out there who would pay a little more for something that would last longer, that is more pleasant to use, and that is nicer. I'm a huge fan of the wire cutter. I think oftentimes they err more on the side of something that's more affordable and does what it says it does. But oftentimes they veer away from like, they don't as much put weight as we do on paying more for something that's more pleasant to use. That like you just, when you wake up in the morning and you use it, you feel really nice. And that's really hard to put value on. So like I respect why they don't. And sometimes like they make note of it. I love how they nuance some of their reports, but I think for us, there's plenty of customers out there who would love something that they can really enjoy using, and they can afford to buy the thing that's not just the cheapest thing out there. If we're going to go and sell 20 million units a year of any one product, I think maybe we need to do something different. But I think as like a challenging upcoming brand, I think that's kind of what we need to do. And so we earn our customers' respect through getting those extra dollars to then go and spend them in the best way we can, and sort of making it something that then they can visibly, tangibly feel and see.
Maybe it's super different in hardware, but in the building process, like, is there something that gets in the way of building a good thing?
If it wasn't improper estimation of risk or how long something that was going to take, it was a communication issue. I think communication issues are full stop like the #1 thing that drive things going worse when something wrong happens. I think it's normal, fine for something to go wrong. Like you can't perfectly predict everything, nor would everything be designed perfectly the first time. But how you recover from that, to some degree, is dealt with by, well, did you leave room in the plan for this to happen, and or were you banking on that not happening? And then on the flip side, like, okay, how do you then, like, who's on first for figuring out what to do? And then what are we going to do? And then have we thoroughly assessed the problem? Clear comms is what enables the focus that you need to do craft. I think just figuring out like what are my priorities and what am I supposed to work on is like, even if you don't know that's what is stopping you, it's so easy for that to take up all of your active brain space. Whereas if you show up and you know exactly what the next problem you need to solve and where to spend your time, it's much more straightforward to then focus on that problem, right? Where you're not like constantly looking up like, what am I supposed to be doing? And then it's easy to get distracted by pings on Slack or whatever because it's a lot easier to tell someone no, or like, I can't do X, Y, or Z if you know what you're supposed to be doing. We're a small team, and so we work on grinders, coffee makers, cups. I'm sure I'm missing lots of stuff. Like, yeah, vacuum canisters, like all across the board, and they're all super different. And actually we do like multiples of our products, like the coffee maker and the kettle, they both have a rotating clicking knob on them. And yeah, we do learn a lot every time we launch a product and do a new design. And there's some stuff that like I wish we could just copy paste or update on our already manufactured stuff. And sometimes we do roll it in if we can, like if there's another excuse. But it's tricky because with a product that's already launched, on the physical side, it is weird to significantly change that product without calling it something new or like changing the name or like relaunching. So sometimes we do make process improvements or we do redesign the product internally, but in a way we like do our best to make it so that from a customer perspective, if you bought one this year and one 3 years from now, you should have no way of knowing, because half the time when we're fixing stuff, we're fixing the ones you never saw. It's like we redesigned this part entirely so that it wouldn't fail, and that 99% of them now come out of the factory and make it to customers instead of 95. But that then does like let it bleed past the cliff deadline in that sense, where like, I think the thing that people don't see as much, especially with hardware, is it is like very organic in that sense. Like parts come and go. Like sometimes a manufacturer who makes like this resistor decides they don't want to anymore, or like it's not a good enough business for them, or they thought they had a big customer who then drops out, or like for whatever reason. And so now we're having to go like spin up the whole thing, like find a new supplier, and like all of that is like, it's this like organic process where like stuff is constantly changing, and like you do your best to like keep the end output indistinguishable, but like the mix going in, like all the ingredients in can be super different. And that's kind of fun to manage, because oftentimes, right, like for something like software, you kind of want the credit of, well, we put all this work into like making it better, and we kind of want to tell you about it, right? Like, hey, we made this way more reliable or way better, but like to some degree, because you can't update previous customers, you kind of want to hold it in a bit and just be like, It's just silently a lot better now that we've learned a lot more stuff.
But many of you will not get that because you have your existing kettle that's working fine for you right now in your home.
Yeah, and so sometimes if our QA process isn't perfect and we have some stuff slip through the cracks that shouldn't have to a customer, if we find out like, oh, hey, we see a bunch of those in the field and we have actually no idea how many of them there are, we might then go and fix it. And then when the customer complains, we're like, oh, of course, yeah. And then we ship them a new one. And they don't like know that the new one we shipped them like has that problem for sure solved, because it turns out many of them had the thing. And like for car companies on a grander scale where it's like literally life or death, like that's when they issue a recall. Thankfully, we haven't been in a situation like that. Like it's like, oh, we're seeing like 6 of these when there should be 0. And either way, it's like the knob is wobbly or whatever it is, and then we go and make process improvements and fix it. It's funny how you have to approach it differently for hardware, where like you really try and keep sort of like the same face as much as you can.
Do you anticipate keeping this level of quality being like significantly harder as you grow, or are there like how do you see that sort of changing?
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely trying to grow. We took venture capital investment 2 years ago, and up until then it was bootstrapped by Jake and a couple folks. And so when they made that decision, everyone said, hey, are we doing this? And they went all in. And so yeah, we're actively trying to grow the company and really build it into a broader kitchen brand.